Welcome to Recap King. In this video, we will explain Sakamoto Desu Ga episodes 1 to 6. This series tells the story of a school student who always looks cool to all students and teachers. Let's follow the storyline of Sakamoto Desu Ga episodes 1 to 6. Sakamoto Desu Ga tells the story of a high school student named Sakamoto. One day, 3 delinquent students, Mita, Mario and Ken who often bully Sakamoto, intend to prank him by dropping a dirty whiteboard eraser on his head. But their pranks made Sakamoto get praise from the students in his class because he managed to catch the dirty eraser with a very cool move. Mita and his friends became very upset. When Sakamoto went to the toilet, they secretly followed him and poured a bucket of water right over the toilet cubicle where Sakamoto was. Mita and his friends think that their prank has been successful, but it turns out that Sakamoto has already prepared an umbrella and not to get soaked. Mita and his friends' fun with Sakamoto didn't stop there. When Sakamoto returned to his classroom, his desk and chair disappeared somewhere. Mita, who thought that Sakamoto would panic and find it difficult to study, had to swallow disappointment because Sakamoto instead sat by the window with a pose like a professional model. The girls and teachers were amazed by him. Mita and his friends are even more upset because their plans to bully Sakamoto always fail. Sakamoto can always dodge their pranks in cooler ways, which only makes him even more famous at school. Mita and his friends then plan an even more sinister act of bullying against Sakamoto to no longer act cool at school. The next day, Mita told a student to ask Sakamoto to come to the chemistry lab alone. Sakamoto, who did not suspect anything, immediately rushed to the chemistry lab. But when he got there, he was immediately ambushed by Mita and his friends who intended to beat him. Not only that, they also intend to strip him and then take his photo for distribution. But before their plan was executed, a fire appeared in the room from their still burning cigarette butts. Suddenly Mita and his friends panicked and rushed to the door. Unfortunately, the door of the chemistry lab was blocked by something that made them all locked in the room. When they tried to call for help, their cell phones turned out to be out of power, so they couldn't be used. When Mita and his friends panicked and intended to use a bottle of liquid on the shelf, Sakamoto then warned them not to use it because it could be a dangerous chemical liquid. Sakamoto, who had been looking calm all along, finally started to do something. Sakamoto took off his school alma mater coat and ran on the spot facing the flames. Mita and the others were surprised by Sakamoto's strange behavior. They assumed that he was deliberately making wind or using his sweat to put out the fire. Thinking Sakamoto planned to put out the fire, Mita and his friends followed him by running around the fire. Whereas Sakamoto's real plan was to cause a commotion so that someone would hear it and come to the chemistry lab to check what was going on. Sure enough, soon a teacher came and was very surprised to see a fire in the chemistry lab. After the fire was extinguished, Sakamoto then told the teacher that he caused the fire because he was not careful when using flammable materials. He protects Mita and friends, so they don't get punished, even though they initially intended to beat him and their cigarette butts caused the fire. The next day, Sakamoto's classmate named Sira intends to get the girls' attention at school with a cool, pretentious style. Sira then arrogantly told everyone that he was a famous model. However, none of the students are interested in Sira because they admire Sakamoto more. Sira then felt annoyed because Sakamoto was always the center of everyone's attention. Sira then arranges a plan to prank Sakamoto, but because Sakamoto always manages to dodge Sira's annoyance in a cool way, people are even more attracted to Sakamoto and ignore Sira. Until one day, a bee entered the classroom, which immediately made the girls scream and run in panic. The students who had left the classroom then locked the room, even though the teacher and the male students were still in the classroom. The teacher then ordered his students to take off their uniforms because usually bees are very attracted to black. All the students immediately took off their uniforms except for Sakamoto, who still looked calm in his seat. All the students, including Sira who saw it, were surprised by Sakamoto's calm attitude. It turned out that Sakamoto was trying to catch the bee, of course in a cool way. It didn't take long for him to use the tactic to catch the bee and drive the bee out of the school. Everyone praised Sakamoto's ability to handle this tense situation in a cool way. After seeing Sakamoto's ability, Sira became insecure about competing with him. But then Sira became the center of attention when his friends laughed at his cute body shape and the incident of his struggling with bees. Sira then decides to become a comedian and acts silly to make everyone laugh. The story continues, and one day, Sakamoto, who was feeding the birds in the school's backyard, saw his classmate, Yoshinobu, being bullied by 2 upperclassmen. They forced Yoshinobu to give up all the money he had. Yoshinobu then told Sakamoto that he was often bullied by upperclassmen who always asked him for money. He then asked Sakamoto to help him because he had no more money. Sakamoto was also willing to help Yoshinobu. However, instead of taking revenge on the bullies, Sakamoto invites Yoshinobu to work part-time at a fast food restaurant. Sakamoto said that if you don't have money, you have to work hard to earn money. Because of his handsome look, Sakamoto was placed at the cashier, and female customers began to arrive, causing a long queue. Meanwhile, Yoshinobu has to work hard in the kitchen to fry potatoes, prepare other meals, and clean the kitchen. Even though it was very hard at first, Yoshinobu got used to his work and did it with all his heart. Until it was payday when Yoshinobu became even more excited than usual. Yoshinobu also looked very happy when he received the wages for his hard work. However, Yoshinobu's happiness did not last long because two upperclassmen who often bullied him came to the restaurant on the same day he got his first salary. The classmates saw Yoshinobu working at the restaurant, then threatened him to come to the park. After his part-time job, Yoshinobu went to the park and the two upperclassmen were already waiting for him there. They immediately threatened Yoshinobu and forced him to hand over the money. Yoshinobu was forced to take out an envelope filled with money from his part-time work. But when Yoshinobu was about to hand over the envelope, he recalled his struggles to get the money. Immediately, Yoshinobu refused to give his money to the bullies upperclassmen and intended to keep the money. As a result, Yoshinobu was beaten badly by the upperclassmen. But Yoshinobu still protected his money even though he was beaten. Not long after, Sakamoto came to save his friend. With various mainstay moves at his disposal, Sakamoto managed to fight the bullies upperclassmen. After that, he told Yoshinobu that he also had a skill that only he could do. Hearing this, Yoshinobu was moved and dared to fight his bullies. Together with Sakamoto, Yoshinobu managed to defeat the upperclassmen who had always bullied him. Sakamoto also said that from now on Yoshinobu must fight to maintain his pride like when he defended and fought people who wanted to snatch something precious to him. The story continues and currently Sakamoto is helping Yoshinobu study at his house. Yoshinobu's appearance began to change. Now his hair is longer and he feels more confident than ever thanks to Sakamoto's help. When there was a knock on the bedroom door, Sakamoto quickly hid under the bed. Apparently the one who came was Yoshinobu's mother, Shijimi. Sakamoto had to hide because Shijimi always tried to approach him when he was visiting Yoshinobu's house. Shijimi openly says that he fell in love with Sakamoto in front of his husband and child. When Yoshinobu had to go back to school because his notebook was left behind, Shijimi immediately looked for the whereabouts of Sakamoto who was hiding in her house. Unable to find Sakamoto anywhere, Shijimi finally decides to watch her favorite Korean drama. Sakamoto, who was hiding, finally realized that Shijimi fell in love with him because he was very similar to Chan Kuraizo, her favorite Korean actor. An idea crossed Sakamoto's mind. He came up to Shijimi, ran, and maneuvered as if he were inside the television, even though it was just a recording. After that, the television screen showed Sakamoto saying something to Shijimi which basically he wanted her not to love him anymore. This then made Shijimi burst into tears and decided to forget about Sakamoto. The story continues and this time tells the story of a fierce teacher named Kakuta who is very strict about the rules at school. Every morning, Kakuta always watches over the school gates and will immediately punish students who are late. Kakuta seems to be very disturbed by Sakamoto who is always perfect in everything, including when he managed to escape Kakuta's punishment despite arriving at school at a very tight time. Sakamoto, who has never violated school rules, becomes the target of Kakuta who tries to find Sakamoto's disgrace and mistakes. One day, Kakuta heard Sakamoto's voice and saw a puff of white smoke. Kakuta, who was already very excited to punish Sakamoto for thinking he was smoking, was even surprised to find out that Sakamoto, together with Mita and his friends, were making soap bubbles as therapy to get the three of them to stop smoking. On another occasion, Kakuta caught Sakamoto playing with a broom during class picket. But when he wanted to scold Sakamoto, Sakamoto's classmate said that he was cleaning the dust stuck to the classroom ceiling using a broom. As a result, Kakuta couldn't even scold Sakamoto and left immediately. Until one day, it was Kakuta's turn to teach in Sakamoto's class. Kakuta immediately started the lesson and all the students seemed to pay attention to the subject matter explained in front of the class. However, this is not the case with Sakamoto who deliberately eats food while the lesson is still in progress. Frankly, Kakuta is beyond happy because he can finally punish the perfect student Sakamoto for the first time. Kakuta immediately ordered Sakamoto out and punished him for standing in front of the class until the lesson was over. When Kakuta left the classroom to check on Sakamoto's condition, it turned out that he was taking care of an injured sparrow. Apparently Sakamoto purposely had himself expelled from the classroom to care for and feed the sparrows. Kakuta was moved to see Sakamoto's noble temperament. The story moved and now tells the story of a girl named Megumi who has a crush on Sakamoto. Megumi often stalks and takes pictures of Sakamoto secretly, until one day, in the photos she takes of Sakamoto, there is a scary ghost that always follows Sakamoto. Megumi was worried and wanted to tell Sakamoto about it, but Megumi is also worried, because if she shows the photos to Sakamoto, he will know that she has been secretly taking photos of him. Megumi doesn't want him to hate her for being presumptuous by taking pictures without permission. Megumi is even more worried because Sakamoto often experiences strange events because of the ghost. But as usual, Sakamoto is always relaxed and responds in a way that is always cool. In the end, Megumi realizes that the female ghost loves Sakamoto. Megumi then ventured to tell this to Sakamoto, and begged him not to misunderstand her for taking photos of him secretly. Sakamoto didn't seem too responsive to Megumi, who claimed to have photographed him secretly and remained good friends with the class president. Sakamoto then made copies of his facial expressions using a photocopier to thank the ghost girl for loving him. He hopes that this will help the ghost to cross peacefully into the afterlife because his feelings have been conveyed to Sakamoto. After that, the female ghost was never seen again in Megumi's photo. This is the end of Sakamoto Desuga episodes 1 to 6.